Gentlemen, why don't we try to get started?
I mean, but thank you for that information.
Okay. Thank you, thank you. Well, almost thank you. All right. Thank you for coming to the meeting of the Waterfront Parks and Cultural Committee of Community Board 1. I am Paul Goldstein, the chair.
Andrew Zelter, vice chair.
I am Sweetie, Director of Planning and Land Use.
And just FYI, the people sitting around the table are the members of the committee. Why don't we get right into the meeting agenda? We have a fairly long one, and I'm pleased to introduce for the first item an old friend of ours. This is Wari Price. She's president, as many of you know, of Battery Conservancy. She's been running the park for a number of years. I guess you'll 26. So she does a great job and takes care of that park well, but let's have her give us the update on her park. Thank you for coming.
Well, it's always a pleasure because over these 26 years, Community Board 1 has been in lockstep with everything we've tried to do here. Whether we were fighting the incursion of the MTA that was taking over the whole park with the #1 subway, we pushed and got them to put the stations in front of the Staten Island Ferry. You know, we've really been through it. You're putting us on your capital priorities over and over again. That's why we're 95% done on the landscape. So what I'm going to just give you an update. Paul had called me and said, you know, you really haven't been here lately, and we'd love to know just what's going on. And so I'm going to go quickly through what's going on, but I'm here to answer any questions, any curiosities, anything that I can give you any other insight to. Is this turned on? There. So this was just sent to me, which gives you a sense. This is our playground. It's a huge, huge playground for any city park, but for us downtown, I'm so proud that we worked a way to get the maintenance yard brought into the, so we've increased it that much more. It used to be just this with the old park office, and now it's going all the way out to the bikeway. This gives you more of a plan. What you just saw was this. So everything here is all been done. This is in construction and the park house is in design. And of course, we're not giving up on our dream for the castle. It's even with the Park Service, it's even becoming more evident that if we don't do something there, it will basically float out. It was always in the water and it will turn to that. So, but tonight,
What does that mean?
the castle was out in the water in 1800. There were causeways. The park was just this way. All of this has been landfill. So there's a part of me as I see, I've got resilient planning here and here, even though we are not stakeholders in the planning process, we certainly will deal with what we're doing here. And it's going to be very, very important to see the relationship of raising the promenade to the integrity of the castle wall. And, but historically, it was out in the water, and there were causeways that you reached it from the park. We wanted to let you know we're also partnering with the Department of Sanitation because we just don't build for fun. We build to send messages. And it's very important to us that Sea Glass tells you that we want zero waste in our landfills and in our oceans. So we are now a depository for your reusable bags. When they wrote us as a company, I said, well, you can send some bags to our office, but what I want to do is be a distribution center to send the message home that this is that no plastic in our oceans also. And March 1 is around the corner. Do we really know it'll be a nickel, a paper bag when you go out on March 1? So we're using this to talk about sea glass, and we're also using this to talk about, we didn't create sea glass for fun only, but it's to promote clean and healthy oceans, plastic free. So when we do things, and what I'll show you tonight is the playground, everything were salt tolerant, so little did we know Sandy would cover them all, but it did, and they survived. Are the sense that these permeable spaces are holding the water before it goes into flooding our sewer system. So I think we wanted to bring beauty. Horticulture was the answer, I felt, to the soulfulness of people that used us as a survival route on 9/11. That is our story in 9/11, is that everyone that got to the park that day got home safely. So when we decided we would build a garden for survivors, it had to be the most beautiful gardens. And then from there, here we have a garden of fish, but we also have the Boss Gardens. We have the gardens around sea glass, all of these gardens. You know, the bikeway gardens. I mean, the horticulture that's come into this park, which was not part of the master plan, has been, I think, extraordinary and given us a biodiversity. That plus never using a toxin or a pesticide has brought us be a monarch way station. The birding, the insects, all of that, as we now look to the playscape and what should it be. Also, Earth Month, we're already starting. We've partnered with our neighboring institution, the National Museum of American Indian. There's a very important totem from the West Pacific Coast that will be making a journey through the country, and it's about water and what they're calling drawing the line. And this is its route from the Pacific Northwest to the east. And on April the 4th, with the museum, we will display this on the oval to greet everyone should come and spend that moment as the interpretation of the totem, the sense of your quest for clean water, for what is resilience, how do we respect water today. So we'll also be a drumming, American Indian drumming is, I tried working with them to expand it to all ethnicities that drum. So that day, that Saturday, will be the beginning of us looking at Earth Day. We also want to be sure that we are in your capital budget priorities for the park house. We have some money for it. They've taken some from it to curb the budget overrun for the playground. But I want to be sure, Donna, that we still have park house family restrooms in your priorities for capitals. This is what it looks like today. This is the interior. I'm not sure that's up to code for this. So we definitely need to renovate this building. The status of the play space, we are going to be sending these around. Please take one and send them around, Alice. This is an exciting moment because this is our rendering for State Street entrance. It's right across from the Sea Glass Carousel. And this is another photograph that even gives you more of a closer look. This is 1.5 acres. Anybody experience? All of you down there, you know how incredible that is.
Put a building on there.
So that
Could put a high rise on there.
Well, it's not easy to build here. We're above the 3 subway lines. And the intake does have a wreck on site as we're excavating. But to me, the scale of this is our opportunity to create an amazing natural, nature-filled experience for children. So this is another camera shot looking north, that was looking south, and they're really working. So we're getting a lot of movement here, and the official groundbreaking will be the 12th of March. But this is our slides that we had in the current playground, and these are 5 granite slides that'll come off this, what we call adventure bluff. These are nature zones. This takes you up to 18 feet.
Wow.
It's ramped, it's totally accessible to wheelchairs, to carriages, and walkers. So we really want to invite everyone to experience that. And look at the horticulture. There's 40,000 square feet of plants. We're growing the plants now inside. The plantings, all the horticulture is our responsibility for private funding. Also, these major shade structures we will fund privately within contract. This is a climbing structure, and these are our new climbing structures, which are built into the tree canopy. This is the wheelchair child who's come up the ramp but has the same under the canopy elevated experience as able-bodied children who can climb up, go these rope ladders to access these other tree houses. So that whole sense, again, this is called the marshland. So it will create to take the waters, draw them into tanks that will be underneath these gardens, but basically hold the water. Here is this wonderful sand play. There are three houses here, and then the three kind of elevated houses. There's 6 playhouses in this marsh area. This is the 16, and this is how it will be. It's another angle that shows the relationship of the sand beach play to the bluff. And then this area, which we call the dune, is an amphitheater structure, and this is something that has never been put in a playground. It's an improv theater. It's an improv experience of self-expression. Puppets can come, children with different classes, but we already have now 150 citywide schools coming to the Battery Urban Farm annually. Remember the 8 women from Millennial High School 5, 6 years ago asked me to plant a vegetable garden? And we saw that scar of that area where the MTA had taken out 80 trees, and I went, oh, we need good new karma there. So a 1-acre urban farm was planted, and we went from those 8 women to 7,000 students annually now, from 150 different schools throughout the 5 boroughs. Now, look what these teachers will have access to when they make the bus ride all the way to give their classes the experience of how to put a seed in the ground, how to see where vegetables are grown, and how to eat more healthy. They can also come here for adventure day, where you're accessing from the bluffs all the way down to this colorful grove, and the show box. I love its name. It's 14 by 14 feet square. This is much more for the children to put off plays, but on the corner, Cheryl Hinson from the Jim Hinson Foundation been consulting with us for the last 5 years. She says you have to have a hand puppet stage. You can't just have large scale or marionettes. You know, children really need. So on the back side, there's a hand puppet stage. So it will have hand puppets as well as the front. And this is good for children to paint scenery. There are 2 layers of curtains. Basil Twist, this famous designer, was working with us, and he said, theater is all about the curtains. Let's get this straight. You will know if you belong in front of the curtain, behind the curtain, or drawing the curtain in life, to how you participate in performance. So I've had the most wonderful people come to this project. So we have 2 wire mesh curtains, totally weather accommodating, and to be pulled from this side and then to the back side. And then there'll be areas over here we can do the art of painting the scenery. There was a music element in here of these musical bars, but they were taken out for budget, but we have the room for them, and when we raise the money, we will insert them. So what is self-expression? It's dance, it's performance, it's the spoken word, it's painting, it's all of the sense, and it's the house is yours. So you've seen the little storefront or the houses, the playhouses, but New York has never done an improv theater that's open all the time for children to decide, how do I want to express myself? A parent can bring a guitar to the playground and just sit up there and play, or a young teenager. I mean, it's really for everyone, and of course we hope to raise the private money to do some programming and have our own emerging puppeteers come and celebrate this. But the ecology, the biodiversity, children meandering through this carnival, there's lots of self-discovery here. The one thing, the family committee that came, oh gosh, I don't want to tell you how long we've been working on it, but 10 years ago they said, we know the old playground but I have to say my child loves the freedom of movement there. Even with no amenities, don't overstuff it with equipment. So that was something we took from the very beginning as we looked at the cadence. There is such great circulation in this 1.5 acres of space. And there's plenty of areas back in here to sit, read a book, you know, look at the fireflies, the grasshoppers, the worms, many of the things that we could also access in our gardens. But here you're totally protected. From the moment you come through these gates, there's the name is Battery Place Scape, because look at all the various topographical areas. You close this gate, this is totally a protected, roaming discovery experience. And I think that's the other thing as a parent now, grandparent, you know, knowing there's only one way in and one way out is very important to the safety of our children. And then these gardens will also be a part. So horticulture is a huge part of this playground. You know, we've got some trees that are marginal. We're planting a lot more, but I think we are blessed with about 8 or 9 really mature trees also. So that'll be the interest. And so sea glass, to give you a taste, sea glass is right across the path. So groundbreaking, we hope all of you will come and bring children. We know it's a school day, but it would be nice to have multi-generational people there that day to celebrate, and also as a community really say this has been so needed and so years of planning. So we are very glad that the funding, so much has come from federal money, whether it was MTA mitigating money or LNDC money. This has really been, for LNDC, the final revitalization project for the 9/11 funds. And I think it responds to where we are as a community, our need for our children, freedom of play, freedom of understanding, a really, I think, it's certainly not a crowded playground. That was not the idea. But I think there's enough stimulation for activity and programming, and certainly for the teachers that will bring children. So there's our groundbreaking invitation. Please come. It would be great to celebrate it with you. And thank you for being able to let me come today and give you a little bit of understanding.
Lori, would you be able, you're a force of nature, it's incredible, you're amazing. And so is the designer who did that
Yeah.
wonderful project. Wonder where they are.
Team.
Right. Anyway, I just, can we just put a slide up? I don't know if you can answer questions or if you feel comfortable or able to, but I think it's an opportunity
Yeah.
for, you know, the sort of resiliency crowd. Some of
Right.
us are here, we happen to have the chair and co-chair, right? And then just, you know, go, if you could go to the slide 1, the first,
Yeah.
your opener.
Right.
And just, I just want to better understand myself as you understand it. What, you know, this lifting of the wharf, right? If you
Yeah.
could just give us a little bit of that,
as you
and
know-
how you'd like to ideally see that, and what part the Conservancy does or can play in the development of this as we go forward, which is upon us.
The understanding so far, because they just brought on Stantec, Parks did some work within their design department that I looked at about a year ago about raising the promenade. And so it would start right, you know, we have no idea what the Coast Guard's plan is for this area, but it will bring this area all the way, and then it has to basically fold into this whole thing that's being done at Puree. What I want to be sure is that I've got my head around that these are going to become sunken gardens. You were basically looking down. I've done the studies of standing here and seeing how much of the water will be compromised from a view. You will be able to still see water. You see this much now, you'll see this much. So the raising of this does block that impact of, wow, there she is out in the harbor. You will not, you will still see her, but you will not see as grand a vista. There's nothing wrong with saying, oh, I can't wait to get to the edge of walking on top of this raised platform to get the full effect of that harbor. It'll just be something you'll have to put a little bit more effort to have that same wow impact that you get when you're right here. So I've got my head around the sunken quality of looking up at a raised promenade. If I know that at high tide we are getting more water on that promenade than we did 26 years ago when I began. The basement at the castle, which should have never had one, but when it was the New York Aquarium, they had the pumping station for all the pools for the fish. So they built in a basement here. It floods at high tide every day. So we are seeing that effect. We cannot not, is a wharf the best? I'm not an engineer. I'm not a hydrologist. Nor can I see the future. Is this the best of engineering and science we have out there? I have to just hope that Stantec, the city's EDC, have the ability to pick the best people to get this. But I do know the water is the water coming not up so much to be a 6 foot. You know, I go back and forth hearing 11 feet, which was in the paper the other day. Did you read that? And I thought, well, that must be from, you know, that's not where we are now, 11 feet up. So I think it's from another thing. But I've been told from where we are now, go up 6 feet. But we really won't know till Stantec does its analysis, and in a year they'll be coming through and we'll be a party to it. My job is to ensure it's still a jaw-dropping experience to come to the water's edge here and view those 11,000 acres of water as they go up and down tide. And that this park that we've worked so hard on is still an asset for us that are living and working downtown, and then the people that come. I still don't know how they're gonna deal with the elevation and then how boats you'll board, you'll embark and disembark from this elevated area, but I'm sure there'll be ways of dealing with that. And I'm sad that that gorgeous, you know, the beautiful bench that is so beautiful there that's carved, and how do we reestablish that bench at a higher level with that? You know, they're gonna be, things change. The Battery has always changed with the needs of this city. We're just part of its history going forward. And I, as sentimental as I am, as attached as I am to all the things we built there, I gotta get over it. Because the safety of this, the utilization that we will continue to serve, is really the guiding principle here. Continuing to serve. So I'm there, Alice. I'm watchful of the kinds of materials that I want to be good. I want to be able to still give you a first-class horticultural experience with the Gardens of Remembrance. They may be higher level. How do you step down into those beautiful bosque areas? Will the fountain be able to exist with the new plan? All of those kinds of things we will be working with, but it will be a different type of experience than what we have now. And I think we should all enjoy it the way we see it now, see the transformation, and say that's what we've done, because I think what we do here at the Battery should send messages all over the world to Waterfront, to make waterfronts responsible for what they have to do.
Well, I'll hope you will join us on the resiliency side of things. You know, this is one of the most exquisite places in New York, so whatever you can do to help us, the community, get it right, you know, we
Well,
love your help.
You know, we're really working, I say this is built to flood and recover. That's the Battery's mantra. We're built to flood and recover. You can't say we're building no flooding here. We are here because this is all landfill, this was all water. So let's take the water in, let's be good stewards of the water, certainly from Star Water Management, and then how do we recover? What is the process of replanting the salt? Right now, every tree we're planting now was here when the New Amsterdam settlement was here. Because those pin oaks, they lasted through Sandy. The London planes are not sold. They should have never been brought over from Europe. The sycamore, we only have one American native sycamore in the entire park. So, we need to plant our natives. We need to understand how to really, I call it climate consciousness. We cannot be like it's not happening. It's happening. So, I just really, have loved this more than a quarter century of really bringing this park back.
How are the bees doing there?
They love it. We've moved them because, we've moved them over to a much quieter place where the labyrinth is. Back in here where the foliage is really quite, right in here, it's very, the beekeepers are so happy because it's not as visible and there's so much plant material. Everything here is an edible shrub or plant. Remember when the bikeways was being built, we had to move the urban farm over here so we kept the children to have a place to come.
Where's Pier A, vis-a-vis the bees?
Here's Pier A.
Okay.
The bees are right in here.
Thank you.
And the beekeepers are thrilled. So we made that transition this winter before, when it's dormant. But they were here, as you know, they were right in here before. And that's all, everything here you cannot enter. This is all quadrat off now for the construction space.
So, I know we've talked about it many times before on the, the bike path and the kind of the north side of resiliency. I think many of us that are on the joint committee, I don't know how many people that are just on parks know what's happening with the bike lane. About any of this, do you know?
We did have a presentation last month where we went through a lot of it, probably not in the detail that you did, but we had Battery Park City presenting it to us, yes.
Right. So a lot of, on the north side, many of us feel like there should be, instead of going into the park, we'd love to see a wall on the outside. That may or may not come to pass given how much planning has been done. But, I wonder if, you could tell us just a little bit about, not everyone knows about what your understanding is of what's happening on that side.
Well, I'm glad Nick's come in because he can correct me if I misspeak. But I know Parks believes in open government. The Battery never had we're not a gated community, and the flow of people has always been open. But as I understand from my latest meeting, is the grate is not here, but this is the grate, the air shaft for the underpass. And now we know there'll be certain columns for the deplorables to be attached to along here. Deplorables, as in deplorables. I'm in it.
Don't get into politics.
Perfect, I love it. That's a new name.
Most people don't even use it. I
You
said
can
it.
call them that now.
Absolutely.
There you go.
The
You got it.
deplorables, we got it.
So the deployable will be here, and we know those are 3 feet columns. So they're not small columns. These are big, important pieces, and they will march along the opening of Pier A. Then we now know there is a wall because those gates don't work. And so, because we don't have a substructure to support. So this whole area here is a 9-foot wall, whatever the wall becomes. So, and then we cross our path here that will have a gate that will come up and storm. And then it starts again here, 9 feet. Then it comes in to this area. This is all constructed and is basically destroyed in this plan, and a berm, an elevated berm comes in, and the wall becomes buried into a barrier here, but it's an earthen barrier. And when I worked, it was really very close to the comfort station initially, and I was very concerned about the security. What would start happening there if someone wanted to go to the bathroom at 5 in the afternoon in the dark of winter? I mean, you're right next to a big, 9-foot berm. So they moved it out, so to give us a little bit more area around this. And, so it does come into this area though, so this will no longer be the gardens, the bikeway gardens that you see today. There'll still be bikeway there, but it will be with a wall that's buried within earth versus a continuation of an exposed wall here and here. And then it doesn't because of the grade change, it doesn't have to be 9 feet for very long. It goes down lower and it comes out here, and I think it's only, 2 or 3 feet tall?
Shorter as you
It
approach.
really comes down here to be a much less barrier wall. So it's not like it's all the way along there. So it's a major change and kind of destruction of a lot of work we just did, but if it's what they really believe should be there, and it is what it is.
Okay, by the way, when do you expect the playground to open?
16 months, and we have LNDC to thank for this aggressive construction schedule. So I'd say April, May 2021, because of the funds having to be spent. So we're working really hard to keep everyone.
Just one more quick question, just looking ahead, you talked briefly just about the castle. I see the 5-year extension, I assume that's for the restaurant.
Yes.
Can you just give us what's the sort of thinking on these two areas and the Coast Guard building? I mean, I can see this is gonna be ahead of us, but probably not as ahead as we might think.
Right.
Just
I
what's-
haven't had any at all discussions with the Coast Guard, so I have no idea what their
Okay.
plan is, nor the Staten Island Ferry, for that fact. The restaurant, the city retracted its request for a new tenant because there were too many unanswered things. I mean, how can you get someone to come in and spend quite a few $1 million fixing up a restaurant and their view is going up 6 feet? So there were too many questions, so they decided they would offer it to people that had shown interest on the site for a 5-year extension. It's my understanding that the existing people, even though it's a new equity group, but the Battery Gardens people that were for will now assume a 5-year extension to keep it open, because vacant is not a good idea. So that's what I'm understanding. Hopefully he'll be up and running by spring. And so it'll be, and then after we are all built out here, everyone will know just what is this, how much you have to build up on different floors to still have those water views, which is the reason people love to rent out the space, and that's part of their business plan, is the site. So as far as I understand, they'll continue on this 5-year period, and then they'll issue another grant one when they know what everything looks like. Also, anyone coming in here, this is till in 21, spring 2021, and this isn't such a great, construction sites are construction sites. And then I have no idea when, I've heard different dates when this construction would begin along the water's edge. So the city, I think, rightfully decided this is not the time, it's not a fair game to determine who should take it, and they would just do a 5-year extension. And so I think the people that are there now will continue.
And how about the castle?
The castle is, we have a partnership with the Park Service. It really is about money, because our partnership with the National Park Service is, they'd love to fortify this, but they'd love to have it be a great testament to its incredible history and utilize. And we, Senator Moynihan loved this project. Got $6 million. We spent just a little bit of it, and then it went back into transportation pot. So I think it is important for our history. If we do not do something there, that history of Fort Cultural Center, where Jenny Lynn sang Castle Garden Immigration, which was the first immigration center ever in this nation, run by the state of New York, the first aquarium ever. This adaptive use of incredible, important parts. If we don't have it there, do we forget that history? So but the water is Pfeiffer, who won the competition 15 years ago, when he was just out on his own, just beginning, has a structure that goes down to bedrock. It's a pavilion that fits down inside. We do not deal with the historic walls at all. It's a metal structure down to bedrock, and then has a couple of tiers. And then there's a kind of a performance center and an interpretive center in the center of it. Yes, Liz, thanks.
So I just wanna continue the theme of architecture. And can you talk about the house, the bathrooms, the playground building and
park
the
office.
programming
Yeah.
for that? And
The park
and-
office today is a real mishmash, as you saw. We are District 1's office, even though there's not any park personnel that works at the Battery. The
Are you
Battery
guys hearing this?
Conservancy is now funding 100%
Yeah, and I'm gonna
everything.
ask for a resolution on this issue, but we'll cover
But-
that later.
But 100% of all the gardens, the mowing of the grass, the caring for pest control, the reseeding, the replanting, the picking up of the garbage, the sanding of the benches, just on and on and on maintenance is done by the Battery Conservancy that I've just said, 26 years, we've never received a penny in operating funds from the city of New
Thank
York.
goodness for you.
So it is not easy to raise
And
this
how much
here.
money have you raised?
Well, it's about 160 including capital and operating of what we've put into the
160
project.
million. So my concern is that the Battery Conservancy has been here all these years, and the community has been here all these years. The city agency, the mayor changes, the staff of these agencies change. They've got this kind of balkanized resiliency thing going on with one firm doing this and another firm doing that, and the planning part of the Parks Department calling the shots about this, and the capital projects weighing in on that, and, you know, and I feel that they're not, like, the Battery Conservancy doesn't have a leadership seat at the table, even though they've set the vision for this park. The park has had master plans that Wari has led. There was a horticultural master plan that Pete Oldoff did, who's the same garden designer who designed the High Line. This was first, and now they've got other people kind of breaking that up. Probably there should be an architectural master plan for the park. If they're raising the Esplanade, then, we have to look at the ticketing for the ferries, and is the restaurant the right building in the right place, and how is that going to fit in with, the future Coast Guard site, and, all this elevating we're talking about. It's like, this is our one public park downtown, and I think that we have to really have a strong voice about its stewardship and how the Conservancy, gets to be a player at the table as the city is doing these things. Cause the city, they're not even paying a penny towards the maintenance, and yet they wanna put, the District 1 headquarters here with all the
No,
cars.
retain it. It
Retain
is
it.
there now. We've asked for many, many years since there is no one that works here. It's bad utilization of time of the workforce to have everybody come someplace that nobody's gonna work in. And then they have to go to where they are allocated for their work for the day. So we've gone through it and through it. What about East River Park? What about this? There've got to be other areas closer to the rest of District 1 where you punch your clock. Because it shouldn't be at the Battery. We shouldn't have to take 40 lockers or 30 lockers in this building when no one works here. But they're well aware of our feelings about this. And half of the building is going to be our family bathrooms that will only be accessible for families, meaning it's unisex, that you go in, you can have a baby over here, whatever. Fathers can go in with their children, it's a total easy way for families to access their sanitary needs. And half of the building has to be that. It's only accessible from when you're in the playground. Because these will still be here. The restaurant never did what it's doing. We took those bathrooms over. Just because it was, but that we couldn't open C-class with the condition. That is that is in their legal document. They just refused to do it. So we're trying to get them as they're coming
mean,
back to do more there.
For
But-
all the money they're spending on East River Park and all the berms there, you know, they could have easily put this whole operations building in there, which is much.
Maybe they still can.
Yes, I was gonna say, it
Well-
sounds like we should advocate for that. So you have 40 lockers right now?
No. There, I don't know how many we have right now, Wendy, but
And how many employees check in every day, punch in?
it's fluctuates, I'd say maybe 20, 25, 30.
So
you know,
maybe you could
depends.
give us some of the details
Okay.
and say none of those 20 or 30 people, you
Are
know,
working
or
in
actually
the
work there and
battery.
have never worked there and will never work there. I think if you could help us with some of the details that we could put in the resolution to make the nitty-gritty to say that, you
Well,
know.
I can certainly say for the last 10 years,
Yeah.
we have had and as more of the park comes on stream, it's our duty to take care of the gardens and everything else. We haven't planned things and then not
Right,
known
even if it's
how
the
to
last
take
2
care of
years,
it.
it
Let-
doesn't matter, you
can-
know, but if you
All
could
right,
give
let's
us
see
some
if
of the
we could pull
details.
together what we want to put into a resolution. Number one that I wanted to cover was this revelation that the city doesn't contribute a dime towards our largest park
It's kind of shocking.
is amazing. And I tell you, as somebody who's been down very active in this neighborhood for most, longer than Warren, that's remarkable when I heard that. So I think we should shout out loud and clear that that has to come to a close, and we need city funding for much of the operations of the park. So that's number one. And as far as these other things, maybe we should just ask for a planning process whereby obviously the Battery Conservancy is a major player and the community board, and it should reflect, the changing dynamics of Lower Manhattan, a stakeholder kind of affair whereby, we come together and help rectify some of these other issues, because I don't know if we just talk about lockers and the office,
Right, there's a
whether
lot of
that's gonna
things.
cover everything that we want to.
Well,
But
and
is
I
that
was-
one of your asks, to have a more participative seat at the table? Are you seeking that?
We've never been in this situation before, because we always funded all the design. And then we come to you, we work it out, and then we go to the Parks Department to be sure they like the design. They usually would go to them first, and then come to you, then go to the public design. So this is a new thing for us. And because it is, first of all, we don't have $119 million to raise the wharf. So the capital intrusion, the influx of capital money needed has to have government at the table. Government has to run this, because it wouldn't be right for a nonprofit that is not bringing
Okay,
that
but-
level of money
But you
to
were
the table.
very involved in designing this new playground, right?
Right. And
So,
to Battery Park
it's
City's
not as though they're not
deference,
involved at
Battery
all.
Park City has included us all along the way. They really
Okay.
have. So I want to thank them for bringing me in. What I wanted and Parks wanted were two different things, two different themes. And it's Parks Department
You're
property
talking
that I
again
spoke.
about the resiliency.
That's right, for
Right.
that part. That's what you're talking
Well,
about.
and-
But
That's
the
the
re-
only thing I haven't
don't
been
know if you're
involved
talking
in,
about
And
was
what-
resilience.
Well, the reason I'm asking that question, sorry Wendy, the reason I'm asking that question, if it goes into a resolution and it goes to an elected or wherever it goes, and someone comes to you and say, what specifically would you like to happen for the Conservancy? I just wanna make sure we're in lockstep
Where
as
we
to.
are right now, the Conservancy needs operating funds to do
So that's point one.
this park. If we,
Well, that's
I'm
what I
not
said.
going
Yeah.
anywhere, but if the Conservancy went out of
You got
business,
this right.
how will the Parks Department take this on?
Okay.
So we're saying, we think what we do is a good bargain for the city. And because beside the tools, there's a real commitment to this landscape. So that's my biggest
Got
ask.
it. Yep.
These are huge projects. I'm not an engineer. I wanna be sure we have the best people, but I'm not in EDC. Even Parks wasn't in EDC to
All right.
determine Stantec. So these are such big things. I don't think it's appropriate for us to lead these initiatives. It's nice to be there, be listened to, but there's no you can't make legislation that we have to okay it before it goes out to bid.
Right, but you
So
should
what-
very much be a partnership, because what I was gonna say, that what my feeling is, it's much cheaper to build a very attractive wall on the edge than to rip up all the beautiful bike paths you just completed, that are so nice, that just got in there, that we're just enjoying.
All right.
And that's one of the things that.
And I think you
that-
wanna say you'd like to see cost benefit analysis
I
on
would.
everything that's being
We'd
thought of.
like
You can
And-
certainly
to-
ask for those kinds of things,
Or
as
te-
what are we losing here, what
And
are
the
we
design
gaining?
studies that we were never shown of the other alternatives, because we've been asking for our,
We would
for
like
for
to be more
alternatives.
involved in discussions on what
In
ultimately
the
is
early
built.
concept
And
design
that was
phase.
part of
But we asked for those alternatives in a resolution 2 years ago. I mean, I read through our old resolutions.
And this is a parks
not-
decision,
Yes.
not battery park decision, this is a parks
It's
decision not
Parks
to include us.
Department, Nick, jump in.
Yeah, not to
But
include us.
my understanding, this is Parks
This is the
Department property.
Parks without
They
borders.
have given Battery Park City the authority to go out, get a design, and pay
Right.
for this piece. So, but the design, when they cross that line between Battery Park City and the Battery, I've tried so hard to give us our own identity, that changes how the design will be. So unless there's something else that comes up, that it's 100% more expensive to do one thing versus another, I don't know what would happen, Nick, when you go out to bid on this. But they are really responding to the owner. They are the rep for the owner, therefore whatever the owner wants, that's what they're doing.
But we could,
Isn't that
the
right?
part that's from Pier A on is city property and has to go to the PDC, so we should send a strong resolution to the PDC.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's critical, given all the resiliency efforts going on in the city now and for the next God knows how many years, it is absolutely, I mean, we see it all the time on the Environmental Protection Committee. It's gotta be everybody, all hands on deck. You have got to have the likes of Worry Price and the Conservancy behind this. Part of the process, you wouldn't argue otherwise, I imagine. You know, and that should be stated very clearly in the resolution, and the community board and all the players, but that this idea that the Conservancy is somehow different or a different entity than the Parks Department, well, yes, it is, except that they should be working together. And so, and how to make that clear, and I think it would be great if it's a joint resolution, perhaps, also.
I think that makes sense. I mean, we have the leaders of that
I mean, I would
your
think just
committee
both
here,
here.
and it sounds like that's what you're requesting. Does anyone here object to anything
But,
along those
if they
lines?
get city money, local people have to be on your board.
We do have local people on our board.
Who's on your board?
Well, Anthony, your head of the community board is
Yeah,
on our,
who else?
we have Fred Rich that lives at 20, West.
Uh,
I mean, they're neighbors.
Well,
We're happy
why
to-
don't they come and tell us some of the problems as well? If
Well,
they're our
I-
reps.
Frankly, I think hearing from Wari.
Yeah, it's
Or
better
they
to hear.
Can't get any better than hearing from.
Of course, I
Sorry.
know
We're
that.
talking about the
I
resiliency,
understand that.
the resiliency change is more the Parks Department, versus what Worry is doing. In fact,
Right, I
Worry's beautiful
understand
work
that
is gonna get
too.
ripped up.
I'm totally
Yeah.
behind what he does.
Yeah.
I think it's super work, except you didn't tell me you moved the bee. I was just down there at, where the bees usually hang out, and I didn't see them, that's why I.
Oh, well, now you know,
I've
you never
seen it.
want them to
I
go
did
away.
the last couple. Okay.
Okay.
All right, and my understanding, just for the record, based on my conversation, is the operating budget is in the range of $3 million a year. So that's what we're basically talking about here, that Wari is now raising on her own. In any event, let's try to move this because we do have a long agenda and I want to get through it. Okay, so basically, the number one element in the resolution is that operating funds be provided to the park. And, you know, obviously we should talk about what a crown jewel this park has long been and continues to be, et cetera, et cetera. I think as far as the remainder, I think we should put some very supportive language for the Battery Conservancy in the resolution, say how much we admire the work that they have done, and they do a remarkable job, and we're so impressed with the playground, et cetera. And with new discussion taking place about much needed resiliency for this park area. A mechanism and needs to be established whereby the Conservancy has an important role in those discussions, and the community board and other community representatives, something along those lines.
And you had mentioned a couple of specifics, like going forward, that there are cost-benefit analyses that are provided to the community that identify the pros and cons of any of these very major impactful schemes,
And
right?
options, and we need to see options,
Yeah,
and
we
we need to see more of the studies that are going on.
We want to see some of the
Right,
studies.
It's what's
et
happening, and
cetera.
you're seeing it
Yeah.
too, is we're just provided with a final plan.
Yeah.
And it's a little switch of this or that, it would be
Okay.
great to really understand
Well,
it fully.
that's why we're gonna
So we
do
should
this.
identify that.
And
going
you're
forward.
gonna bring us, hopefully, the same resolution to your committee.
I mean, and I would
Yeah.
argue, since this is the Parks Committee, that, you know, there is a big question about why a lot of this work has to happen in parks with its heritage of trees and monuments and culture, and not the city streets
Or sidewalks.
or sidewalks. And, you know, I think the committee, you know, we should be lobbying really hard for our public our green spaces, because they're so rare in Lower Manhattan. You know, we don't have Central Park and Riverside Park. This is it. So to
Yeah.
even take that little sliver, that whatever it is, 7% of the park or something, is a shame.
I think we should do more joint committee resolutions where environmental is paralleled onto, is combined with parks whenever you think is suitable. So there is a little bit
All
of,
right.
yeah.
I mean, I don't object to that. Let's make sure everyone else is on the same page.
Well, let me just say, like, I would just really recommend, if you if you care a lot about parks, to come to these resilience meetings where they're showing, it's all about changing our parks, Wagner Park, Peary Plaza, the Battery, soon a new band of parks possibly, or else buildings, or both, you know, continuing around the bend. So I think, you know, I do think that the committees need to work closely together.
Right, so when we discussed, for example, putting a wall on the sidewalk, cause in there it's very, very wide, and you could build a wall very easily at a much more cost-effective base. You could put the wall in, and if you change your mind, you could take the wall out. Well, if you rip up the bike lanes and you bury the berm and you do all this stuff, that's a much bigger project. And, you know, that wasn't an option to consider. You know, the Parks Department has the Parks Without Borders concept, and there won't be a wall and there won't be a border. So, I think any of you would feel like you at least wanna see the cost-benefit analysis between the two, but that's when we're kind of giving you the crib notes of what happened at the meetings, which again, that's a separate meeting, but I think it affects the park in a big way.
And let me just
Okay.
It's
also
not, it's
add,
a 9 foot.
if, I know you wanna move on,
Well,
but let me just say, if anybody.
Wari also needs to leave, I know that. She
Okay.
told me.
But let me just say, if anybody would like to walk the plans with the Battery Park City Authority's plans for that area along Battery Place, I'm happy to do it. I've gone out there several times with lots of people, and my office is right there, so just email me.
Can you
Thank-
maybe propose a time for this committee and see?
Sure, that would be great.
Okay, so I'm gonna call this question.
Seconded?
Thanks, Lori.
Okay.
Thanks, Wari.
Thank you, Wari, so much.
All right, thank
And
you, as always.
many of us will be there,
Great.
March 12th.
Thanks so much.
That was the date, right?
No, it's tough.
March 12th, 11 a.m.
No
Um,
snow.
Right there across from.
Please,
Sunrise.
no snow.
Yes. Did we get
I
everyone's
think we'll
vote
get hit
on
once.
that? Was everyone in favor of that? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
It's bad
so you
Mark's
got it.
not here to thank us for the birds. He always shows up when we're cutting the tree down.
Okay. Thanks again. Okay. Let's keep going because we do have a lot to cover. Okay, next we're gonna move on to the Hudson River Park item on Pier 25. Rashi, you're gonna give us an update on what's going on with that RFP.
Like before me, actually Tom is going to just give an update.
Yeah, I wanted to
Oh,
I'm Tom Linden, for any of you who haven't met me. I'm the VP of Marketing and Events, and I wanted to just take a few minutes, and thank you, Paul, for giving me the time to
You're
address some issues that came up with a special event that came to us recently. We have an event producer. We have event producers throughout the entire year who come to the park and ask for the opportunity to create some type of an activation. So, as a quick background, a producer came to us representing the Virgin and Cruise Lines about an activation the first week in March 8th, Sunday the 8th. And so what they want to do is, in introducing this new cruise line, they want to create a water projection at the end of Pier 26, at the pier marker, the far western end of 26. And so what they're going to do is, the cruise ship is actually in the terminals uptown. It's going to turn around, go south in the harbor, turn around, and then it's going to come past Pier 26. It's going to stop as a backdrop, and then through the creation of this water projection, they are going to project a mermaid. A mermaid is going to go up onto the screen. Now the concern, when they came to us, the producers said there is a vessel. It has to be put out into the water at that pier marker that is going to create the water wall, along with a safety boat that would be with it. So they inquired about being able to launch that boat from our dock at Pier 26. So that's when I wrote to Graham and said, Graham, right? And Graham voiced his concerns about it. As a result, they're not doing that.
Oh.
They're not going to launch from 26.
All right.
They're going to probably come from Red Hook with the safety boat. And
Well, the rate of the boat would have come from Red Hook anyway.
well, I mean, the bottom line is we're not doing.
What kind of
any
boat
launch.
was it? What kind of boat?
The safety boat? I don't know what the size of the
Uh-huh.
safety boat
Okay.
is, but it has to be there along with this
Right.
vessel that's going to
With the
project the.
cruise ship.
Yeah. Well, so in any case, what they will do is the reason that we considered this is the time of the year. Boating hasn't really started yet. The park still can be a nice day, but it's not the same type of crowds that we really get busy in May, June, July, August, September. So that's why we entertained it. Plus, the other reason we entertained it is because in order to do it, they have to pay a permit fee.
Right.
That permit fee
Yeah,
goes
that's by
back
Tom.
into that goes back into the daily maintenance and operations of the park, and that's why
So
we
now
consider
boards
it.
2 and 4 can't say board 1 doesn't contribute anything. to
We
the
contribute.
park.
I
Yeah.
just want you to know we contribute.
Minimal impact. The piers will remain open. There will be equipment at the far western end of 25, projection equipment, and then what we've got, the contractor on 26 has also permitted us to put some projection at the far end of 26 as well. He's fine with that. We've made sure that it's all clear. So.
What date is that, Tom?
That is on Sunday the 8th, and
March 8th.
Yes, the sun will go down at 7. The boat will come at 7. The big cruise ship, and then the projection will take place as the sun goes down. Maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes at the most. It's to capture
7
content. That's
six
what it is.
6:45.
So
Thank you.
That's basically.
Any more questions? Are we okay?
Well, is it in federal water or is it in the park water?
It's in park water. It will be, and as a result, we will have the letter that we need from DEC. We'll have that letter. And I will tell you that we've done this in the past. If any of you remember, back Pier 54, we projected Carmelo Anthony on the water for Nike. So this type of thing takes place in parks. And again, when it's in our sanctuary, we make sure that we have all the appropriate permits that are needed in order to make it happen.
Well, while we have you here, can you just describe what the procedure is for allowing the community to know about any particular event? That's always been a little bit opaque, at least to me, as to how the community is made aware of any particular event that's being held, and sometimes even closing down the piers that we see in the
Well,
summer.
actually,
So how do you
last
do
year,
that?
last season, we initiated a monthly summary that I put together now,
Right.
and I send it to all of the different community boards if there is something
But
in
we
the
haven't
area.
gotten anything for a while,
But
which
that-
means
because
there's no event.
There's no
Winter,
events.
yeah.
But come
And
April.
you'll continue to do that?
Yes, I mean, come April, when we
Okay.
begin again, then I create the entire list of what's going to happen that month. I send it to Paul, or I send it to the committee, to the community board, and they are made aware of all of the activities that will take place in that month. And I will do that on the
Thank
first
you.
of every month throughout the entire busy season.
Great,
That's great.
Yeah.
great.
Thanks.
All right?
All right,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you again for,
Thanks for coming.
for
On
letting me
late
take the
notice.
time. All right.
Okay.
Very good. Rashi, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Hi, my name is Rashi Puri. I'm the AVP of Real Estate and Planning at Hudson River Park Trust.
A little louder, please.
Yeah, my name is Rashi from the Hudson River Park. I'm here to give you an update on 2 requests for proposals that the park had issued recently. The first one is the Historic Vessels RFEI. It's a request for expressions of interest. So the responses were due in November of 2019. We received a total of 6 responses, and this was for 4 berths, which were on Pier 25, 26, and 97. So 2 of the berths are on the north side of Pier 25, 1 is on the south side of Pier 26. So Pier 25 obviously is going to start this year, so this season is when the Pier 25 berths will be up to begin. Pier 26 is currently under construction, so that would be in 2021, and Pier 97 is in 2022. So the uses that were proposed through the RFEI were educational, cultural, museum, and excursions, primarily for Piers 25 and 26, and there was food and concession only for Pier 97. So we went through the evaluation process. We've shortlisted 2 historic vessels for Pier 25. One is the Lilac, which has already been there, and then we have the fireboat McKean, which is also a historic vessel. It was built in 1953. Both the Lilac and the McKean have robust public programming. We are already all familiar with the Lilac. They've been engaging the public very well the last few years. The Lilac is a museum boat with exhibits. The McKean will also be working with different museums, and they might also have some tours. We're still working out the programming for that. And basically both the vessels fit the physical requirements of Pier 25. They have the required draft for that location. McKean recently got an overhaul, so they are ready to go. I know Lilac is continuing with some improvements, so they'll just continue doing what they have been. Both of them are following the non-profit model, and so they don't require much financial investment. We are really excited to have both these historic vessels at Pier 25, and they should start operations sometime in May of this year. So,
You said May?
May, yeah.
So we're gonna get 2 new boats, the McKean and the Lilac's there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And how about Pier 26?
So, yeah. So Pier 26, we have not really made a determination yet. We are working with one potential concessionaire, but there have been some issues with mooring. So we're still working through the details, and we are not ready to really announce anybody yet. Similarly with Pier 97, we are still going through the due diligence, so we are not able to really have anybody announced as yet, but we will do so soon. Any other questions on this?
You did it.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So I have another one. So the Pier 25 Marina, this is on the south side of Pier 25. This was also an RFP that was out. Responses were due in December. As a recap, this RFP included Concession A and Concession B. Concession A is the mooring field, the sailing school, and the town dock. And Concession B is basically the historic vessel with the food and beverage concession, which is currently Grand Banks. So these were the 2 which we combined into one RFP. So respondents could respond to either one or respond to both. So we received 2 responses for this, and we went through the selection process. We do have a final selection, but it's still subject to successful negotiation and the execution of the concession agreement. We're still in that process. So pretty much it's going to be the same. We have Grand Banks who will continue, and we will have the Pier 25 Marina who've been there since 2018 who will continue. So it's going to be a continuation of what we've had up to date.
How long do they get it for?
So this is initial term is 5 years, and then another two-year extensions.
So like the field where the boats are is one, and then the other is just the one mooring area for the Grand Banks?
Yes,
So 1 5-year term with 2 2-year renewal options.
correct. Yeah. So normally we don't exceed more than 9 years. So this is very typical of what the park does. I mean, again, they have been very successful in operating the food concession, the educational and cultural programming, and also the marina has been working fine. So the operations is of high quality. They have offered a competitive fee schedule which is in line with what they were offering earlier, and they're able to start operations May 1st. So.
What's the name of this operator again?
So it's the same operators as before. It's the Sherman Zwicker, which is Grand Banks, and it's the Pier 25 Marina.
Okay.
What goes on in that marina? I mean, I was just thinking, are there any boats left? There are a lot of boats
So
there?
there are
I know
32
obviously nothing
moorings,
now.
so 32 boats potentially.
32 boats,
Yeah.
okay.
And the town dock is basically pick up and drop offs
Is that the
during
town
the day.
dock, the Citibank town dock?
No, so that's separate. But then there are these 2 60-foot
on the
sections
side,
on the
right.
side. Yeah. And then there's a sailing school, and the sailing school will be operated by Atlantic Yachting. They did some programs, but we are pushing them to do more going forward. So they are going to have more youth summer programs, and they're going to be working more with the community. So we're still kind of working through those details.
Actually, where is Atlantic Yachting? Where else are they?
They're up, I believe,
I
at
forgot, I
Pier,
know. There's someplace else.
someplace north. I'm
Yeah, yeah.
forgetting the exact location. Sorry?
Maybe there might be.
I've seen them at 79th Street.
79th Street. I think that's where they are. You're right.
Good.
Yeah, Pier 79th Street. Sorry. Yeah.
You probably recall, I know we've talked about this community board was on record of asking that private dock eventually open itself up potentially to some public use. Has any of that been considered, and if so, what might be thought as a way to use that? Just seems so underutilized out there quite often, and there's
Right.
like 3 people on any boat in any given half hour potentially, except for rush hour, I assume. But
Right. I don't know if is there a proposal that you have that, I mean, we've talked about it, but there was nothing which was really put together.
I'm not so sure. I'd like to look at me, I see it very differently.
well, just that we had a
yeah.
resolution and talked about
I'm not
it.
so sure that was in the resolution, but I could be wrong. But the problem is there's so many boats in the moorings that now Battery Park City is working on a lot of ferry service too, and bringing ferry service into there. One of the attractions of having the daytime use of the ferry for the and the deck was it didn't have a large impact, and then so that's important to take into consideration.
Yeah.
I don't have a dog in the fight.
I
I'm just
certainly
saying, I'm just saying that
I think the concept was that the ferry, as it stands now, is shuttling people back and forth. It's very underutilized. Was there something else that could be given to the public so that they also could
you mean
use the
that
ferry?
ferry,
That
that
particular
particular,
ferry, right,
that's
right.
another question.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we talked about trips to Governor's Island.
Right,
for the
that was one of them,
leagues.
right.
Yeah, and the only
Yeah.
reason we reached out to city to have that conversation. They were amenable. We just have to iron some things out with Governor's Island first. We
Right,
still
yeah.
have some issues there.
Well,
Right,
we
right,
know
right.
But there are
the leader
options.
of Governor's Island
Yeah.
fairly
It'd be
well.
good to,
So
seems
if
like
you need a hand, let me know.
Oh, strong
Okay.
hand, strong arming.
Any other questions, comments?
Are there any green going on in the park in general, you know, I mean, any sort of,
Yeah, so we are doing a
Kids
lot.
here.
I don't know if you've heard of the Park Over Plastics. That's on our website. It's an initiative to not have any single-use plastics. So we are really pushing a lot for that. All of our tenants have been presented with a green partnership agreement. They're supposed to sign it. Some of them have, some of them are in the process of signing it. So it's basically eliminating any single-use plastics, looking at recycling. We have a resource list that we've put out there for our tenants to look at.
composting.
Yeah, so it's basically the bigger push is the Park Over Plastics right now.
I love you,
I just need to
Andrew.
get two
And
times
you-
from you that you
Any
are.
energy use or any
Do you have
solar
any of
or
these?
wind or any of that kind of
So
stuff?
we are looking into it now. We in fact currently have an energy and water audit that we're doing of some selected buildings in the park. We are working with NIPA on that. Once they put together a report, it's going to give us insights into what we can do. They're also looking at solar and wind energy as options. So we are looking at what options will come out of the report.
And is there any sense of how often, if ever, you're overtopped by the river with, you know, I mean, obviously Sandy is a different story, but like just tides or, you know, is that something that happens?
So Graham knows a lot about that.
Yeah, I'm not.
Well, I mean, to answer your question, Wendy, first of all, the town dock ramp floods every full tide, every full moon at a high tide, every consistently. It actually goes down into the water and you come back up to the dock. You gotta kind of swim to get.
It's cool to look at.
Yeah, it is cool. We get, on a really high tide, with the wind coming from the northwest, we get within 6 inches of the pier. Water. And it will flood into the park just north of Pier 26. There's a slight drop in the promenade.
Yeah.
It'll
It's
flood
wet.
there.
Yeah, I know you repaired part of that, you know, I'm assuming that, but I was just, you know, there's been a few days I've been out there and the water's really high, so,
Mhm.
Just to clarify that it is in our resolution specifically asking for weekend shuttle to Governor's Island for kids' sports teams and ferry to the east side Pier 11 and Wall Street.
That's good. The tyranny of the majority.
Remember, you can't have a ferry at that Pier 25 terminal. There's a capacity limit. I think it's
149.
40, I think 40 people, or 45 people.
They call it a water taxi, I don't remember.
Yeah, it was
and-
49
Right.
is
Yeah.
the limit.
Okay, anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's keep going. Okay, we're gonna get to a couple of art installations, and we
Art.
have Elizabeth Mazzella.
My favorite.
There was one that sent, we have just like a short PowerPoint. I don't know if you want to do that first or second, or what order you want to go.
And
What do you
you
like?
also wanted to give a very brief
Yeah.
overview of how public art works these
Yeah.
days.
So I'll start with that.
Hi,
My
Reggie.
name's Elizabeth Masella, and I'm the Senior Public Art Coordinator at Parks. I work with our temporary art program, known as Art in the Parks, and that's temporary artwork in parks in all 5 boroughs. We have a staff of 2 people working all over, so it's a lot of ground that we cover. Temporary is anything on view for up to 1 year. We don't really do anything beyond that, other than that it becomes permanent. So what we do, it comes in, it stays for a little while, and then it leaves. The process is an open application process, meaning we don't do an open call. Artists can apply anytime. We usually ask artists to submit 6 months in advance to allow for reviews and paperwork and presentations and site visits and all of that. We review projects to make sure they're safe, durable, they're gonna be anchored properly, they're not gonna tip over and hurt someone, they're not gonna blow away or cause significant property damage. All projects are self-funded by the artists. We don't get any money from the city for the projects that we do. We can offer a park sign, that's about it. So self-funding for an artist could be any number of resources. It could be, you know, they're working with a nonprofit organization, they've gotten a grant, they're working with gallery, they have their own funds and resources. They're responsible
do
for materials, fabrication, transport, installation, maintenance, and removal at the end, restoration of the site. In terms of maintenance, if there's any kind of graffiti or anything like that, we notify the artists and we have a contract with them that they need to resolve those issues in 48 hours. Artists are also required to have general liability insurance that protects them and also covers the city if anybody were to be injured by an artwork or it were to damage property, that there's coverage there. We also require artists to give us a security deposit to ensure that the artwork will be removed and the site will be returned to us in original condition. So that's kind of our program in a nutshell. We're doing about 50 to 60 projects citywide every year.
What does the artist get out of this? Besides a whole bunch of.
Well, I think, you know, New York is a unique.
It's kind of a big
Yes,
deal.
when somebody walks by and, oh, that's it.
Yeah. I mean,
That's
New
called
York is
exposure, we die.
That's art.
you have millions of people seeing your artwork.
Yes,
So
right.
it's exposure, but it's also, you know, artists that are working publicly want their art to be out in the environment and seen.
Especially
and
New York City.
experienced. So that's kind of how our program works.
Yeah, exactly, that's what I would.
You got, I'm sorry, I was too,
Yeah.
but I just wanna, so it's only the Parks Department that reviews, who chooses the article? I'm sorry.
We don't choose it, we receive the
We receive it, but if we get like 5 for the same place, how does that
It's kind
work?
of first come,
Oh,
first
are you
served.
kidding? It's first come, first
Yeah.
served?
I gotta get in there.
The idea is,
Oh, I'm
I'll
next.
put a lump of
the
shit in there.
idea is if an artist wants to wait for the next exhibition, they can do that, but there's also hundreds of parks in the city, so there's availability there. We often don't get many proposals for the same site at the same time.
That seems, well, it's expensive, but still, that
Yeah.
seems
Cool.
interesting.
So, yeah, it's very rare that we have artists that come to us at the exact same time, looking at the same part.
I like it, I like that.
Okay, unfortunately, the member of our committee who has the most questions and issues on these issues is not here tonight.
You said
The wife
unfortunately?
sitting upstairs.
Oh, is that where he is? Well,
Get out of here.
that's,
For the big
anyway,
space
but
thing
thank you
always.
for that explanation.
Yeah.
We do have it on recording, so we could play it for him, right?
And we have,
Please.
all of our guidelines and everything is on our website. It goes over like exhibitor responsibilities and everything. So that's
Okay.
available there, and also the expectations.
Well, thank you for that. And now you're gonna, what?
You deal mainly in sculpture.
Hmm?
Mainly
Yeah.
sculpture.
In some instances, we've worked with photographers who have done their work, like printed their work on a banner and put it on a fence, but there's not really a lot of opportunity for two-dimensional work
Right.
in outdoor parks, so it's largely sculpture. Yes.
Just go back, the board had a lot of comments on, a sculpture in Chinatown. Was that Parks Department?
Yes.
So that thing so what happened with that?
Ultimately, the Chinatown partnership decided that they didn't want to do it.
Oh, interesting.
That's,
I was wondering about
Yeah,
that.
Go
I
ahead.
thought so too.
I'm glad I asked.
Yeah.
So it went from all to nothing,
Yeah,
basically.
right. yeah.
Oh, and it was like halfway between
What?
the Tower of Pisa
I'm
and
sorry, I
the
thought you
Chinese
were talking
gate.
about a project
And
we
the
brought,
apple-
sorry.
I know it's a big
I
aluminum
thought
foil
you
with
were
holes
talking
in
about a
No.
sculpture of a dog.
No.
And people were upset about it. The one that you're talking about
Yeah.
is DOT.
Ah,
So
yeah.
that one I
Yeah.
don't-
So we need an update on that.
Yes, we
I'll check.
I think it is a partnership
They
too.
didn't install it at all.
DOT
It's
though.
gateways to Chinatown.
Gateway, exactly.
So that piece is on DOT property.
All
so I
right.
can't speak
All
to
right.
that.
Here we go again.
I got it.
And I don't know the status
All
of
right,
it, so.
but we can try to follow up and get the committee, an
Yeah.
update
Thank
on
you.
that.
Um,
Oh,
should we?
yeah, why don't you present, the two that are coming our way
Is
soon?
it best to use the clicker over here?
I think you could use it from back there.
Must be.
Where is it? Could I get a copy? Could I have that?
So, first,
Yeah.
What do you want?
Could I have that copy?
the first,
All right, I'll look
exhibition
at it.
that
What do you
we're
want,
gonna
this?
share
Yeah.
is, by an artist named Jaime Miranda Van Varen, and he's, Peruvian, so he's in Peru right It'll be on view early May, but it'll be installed end of April. And it consists of 13 of these sculptures you'll see in the slideshow and also on the printout. There are these orbs carved out of like pretty ancient, like pretty old tree trunks that he's excavated out of the ground.
Wow.
They're quite heavy, so they're not gonna roll away. We've required engineer drawings to ensure stability and all of those aspects. They've been exhibited in very, well, you'll see some examples, but in some major world cities, and we haven't had any issues with them. So they'll be on concentrated on one of the lawns. There's 2 empty tree pits, and then 2 on another lawn. So that's kind of the basics of that. They're between like 5 and 7 feet in diameter. If you wanna
Yeah,
go
why
ahead.
don't we-
Everything else to say?
Oh, yeah, well, you can show
Well, why
the
don't you
pictures,
just show
yeah.
some
Yeah,
visuals?
Yeah, this is the project, more or less what she just said. JaimeMiranda.com is his website if you ever want to investigate further. These are a few installations of the works that he's done in public spaces. This one was most recently in Madrid last year to coincide with the big art fair, Arco, that is highly attended internationally. And Peru was every year they invite a different country, and Peru was the year last year, so everything was Peruvian themed. There's another plaza,
Ooh, fantastic.
and this is a more corporate building, and these continued inside.
I don't think you're rolling.
So this is the map that you've seen. So 9 of the 13 would be concentrated on one side, plus 2 on the other, and then 2 tree pits, as Elizabeth said. This is a mock-up of what it would probably look like. So the idea was to have a large concentration in one area to somewhat overwhelm a visitor and really feel the mass and the presence of these giant spheres. So the largest would be taller than the average person. So
What is it made of, stone?
it's a single
Tree
piece of
trunks.
wood.
That's
So-
amazing. What, is that out of Brazil?
Out of Peru, yeah.
Out of Peru rather, and he's shipping these things in? Wow, I can't believe he gets them in here.
It's eucalyptus. So
Look at the
eucalyptus
size of it.
is not native to Peru. It was brought by the Spanish, so you can read into that. And these trees would have been 400 or 500 years old when they were cut down.
Wow, that's amazing. He must
So,
have a lot of money.
You'll see that some of these are partially buried, and they're all ultimately partially buried. But some would be more buried, and some would be on top of mounds that would be added. Now, the ones that are buried would not be going very deep. They'd be like 12 inches or something like this. And in many cases, if you've walked through the park, you notice that there's actually many divots already there. It looks like from previous installations. So in some cases, you're probably not going to have to go down at all. So this is the preliminary engineering specs, which basically details how how much earth you need around it to keep the object from moving. And as you saw, that most of these are actually in this series are not super spherical, so they're automatically going to resist rolling because these are actually carved from the root balls and then formed into a sphere shape. So yeah, basically this is the first proposal from the engineer as to how he's going to stabilize it. So this is a mock-up with the tree pit. The other one would be at the far side behind that tree in the center as you enter the park. So yeah, the idea is that you would be able to have a physical relationship with the works, and you might even be lucky to hear wood cracking. This is an organic material. It will change over the 8 or so months that it's planned to be installed. And any work to be done on the property, on the lawn, will be restored. So pictures will get taken beforehand. Landscapers would prepare it before, and then they would restore it at the end to the current conditions. So this is a mock-up with the tree pit. The other one would be at the far side behind that tree in the center as you enter the park. So Yeah.
Did he
Some shit.
create these specifically for this location, or he has like a warehouse full of these?
He didn't create. Well, they are still being made. So yes, they to some degree they are. He has this project in mind. The last time he was here was October.
Yeah.
He's coming next week as well. So yes, in some respect, he is constructing it just for this project. So
And then do you know where they will go afterwards?
hopefully to the collector.
Purchases, you want to buy one?
Ideally, it would be a one-way trip. So.
You want it?
So.
And what's your relationship to the artist?
I am a friend of a friend, so that's how. So I.
So you're presenting for him?
I'm presenting for him. Yes,
Got it.
and I will be representing him as the local representative throughout the entire process. So I will be doing weekly checks or bi-weekly checks. I will be coordinating any of the logistics.
Got it.
Yeah,
and all
so when
this.
artists aren't local to New York, we like to have someone here, if we're to get damaged or need,
Mhm.
we're vandalized, that, you know, an artist can't really fly here from.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I work independently in the art world, so if we do need restoration of any sort, I can call an objects conservator, I can call
Got it.
somebody to
Okay.
come and tend to the pieces as needed.
It's cool.
Yes.
With respect to the installation, how long do you anticipate it will be, and will it involve any street closures?
It'll be May to November.
The installations?
So 6 months they'll be on view. Installation will take place over a few days.
Yeah, exactly.
And it would be during hours when the park isn't heavily used.
So yeah, the idea would be a nighttime installation.
Yeah.
So
Street closures, though, do you anticipate you'll need to?
I don't think so. There's parking around the perimeter, and if anything, we would utilize parking spots,
Yeah.
which hopefully wouldn't be as much of a problem at night.
Yeah, and like in a park like this, I know it's like heavily used, like lunchtime crowds, commuters, people go to the courthouses working, like we would never.
And just as a matter of personal curiosity, what is your experience with vandalism on these art installations?
I mean, in general, every once in a while it happens, but there's not really a predictor for it. So, you
But
know,
is it pretty low? I mean, you don't.
Yeah, it is low. You know, sometimes someone might scratch their initials into something, but it's very rare that an artwork's been completely destroyed. And certain things lend themselves more to it than others, like a large flat plane.
Yeah.
Is just,
Yeah.
but some works that you think are going to get graffiti or vandalized don't, and ones that you don't think will. But it is, I guess we try and foresee all that and also prepare the artist for that. Like if an artist is concerned that something might happen to it, you might want to reconsider putting something out in public.
Sure. Yep.
But
This one I'm worried about for that purpose.
I love that.
I think it's great. Well, I can see people carving their initials into this.
So this is taken
Wow.
from the artist's website. You can
wow.
see
Oh my
sort of the
God.
stock material
It's
that
like
he
the
works
Redwood
with.
Southwest.
Oh,
How does he afford to do this work?
I think he sells his work internationally, and then with the exchange rates in Peru is relatively inexpensive.
It's incredible.
So,
It's
I mean,
just a fortune.
It's interesting because
Move it
this
here?
requires a crane. They do this out by hand. They crane
It's like
it.
a
they-
Christoph type of thing.
incredible.
What happens to the rest of the tree?
they send it US
Oh,
mail by
I
the
hope
time.
It's already been cut. It's already been cut down.
Yeah.
He hunts down the stump,
like-
so he doesn't.
Yeah,
He's
he's
coming
not
long
killing
after the
the
tree
tree.
has been
I know,
felled.
I know someone who did
Right,
something
farm.
similar, but he did it with, smaller.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like the site.
Imagine the little miniature ones from the Red Maple.
That's a
that way.
Trump baby.
Could have.
so
It's a problem.
So there will be some solar lighting. We don't really allow pole taps. It's very complicated, and sometimes poles aren't working. So solar lights are permitted.
So it'll be lit at night?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and these solar cells last 8 to 10 hours, so more than enough, especially during the summer months, to make it through the night. And so you can just tie them on with a metal strap to the existing lamppost, so no existing structures are damaged or anything. Signage. This is the park that the
Good City Hall.
City Hall
That
Park.
was
Yeah.
great.
So this is something we do something similar again. Nothing really damaged. And also with respect, I know I mentioned that the idea was to make this a one-way trip. With none of the signage is gonna have sale prices, none of the signage is gonna be advertising that this is for sale, that's all gonna be very discreet and through just relationships, and none of that is gonna be broadcast to the public.
Piece of wood.
Love
Those
it.
are fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you have one more.
Yeah.
There's, if you have further questions, you're welcome to
How much
contact
does
me or.
one ball cost?
I think, what's that?
If he doesn't sell it, you can make it into some
I think
resiliency.
He's hoping to sell the entire thing for about $1 million for all 13. So I think anywhere between 60 and 90,000 would be the thought for one.
Plus transportation.
And installation.
And
And you have to have a big
Strong
backyard.
floors, yeah.
That thing is as big as my apartment.
Yeah, oh yeah, there you go, yeah.
That's nice.
Great. So then, yeah, we have one more project to share. We don't have a slideshow, there are
Oh,
printouts.
okay, so this is
This
the,
is just a single sculpture.
Sell it to the Lori Price.
So I'm joined here by,
Point three,
us
added
to
to the
work.
city's
Beck
tab.
Anderson and Luciano Garbati. And this sculpture is called Medusa with the head of Perseus. If you've studied art history, you're probably familiar with Perseus and the head of Medusa, which is in Florence. It's a famous classical sculpture. This is going into Collect Pond Park. Also at the end of April, it'll be on view for 3 months. It's a bronze sculpture, just short of 7 feet tall. It'll be on a 6 by 6 foot circular base, about a foot off the ground. And that's going to go in an area of Collect Pond Park where you'll see in the renderings. It's kind of an open plaza, but there's not really
Where is
anything
that?
there. In the case of a park like this where there's
said
no
the street a couple
grass or anything, the artwork can't be attached to the ground because it would damage the pavers. So it's heavy enough that it'll sit there and be held in place by its weight. You'd ask the artist to put like a protective barrier underneath so that when the sculpture is placed on top of pavers, it's going to minimize damage there. So that'll be on view for 3 months. If you want to speak a little bit about the meaning of the work and what it's about.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Santa.
we got that here.
That's great.
Hello,
Thank you.
everybody.
Hi.
Thanks for having us here today.
So the sculpture of Medusa, the head of Perseus, is a work that I saw on social media in 2018 as a meme, and it said, "Be thankful, we want equality, not revenge." And when I saw the work, I thought that I just needed to know more about it because it seemed like a more significant statement than a meme. So I found Luciano on the internet. I found an article about him and contacted him and asked if he would like to bring the work to New York. And we organized an exhibition in the winter of 2018 and 19. On the Bowery, at the Collective of Artists. So I'm an artist also. I'm a photographer. At that time, we discussed with the patron that if we could find a place to put it, that we could produce a bronze would be funded, which has kind of been the dream of the work since it was conceived. And when I first spoke with Luciano about how he envisioned the work, he said that he wanted to see it in a public place and not in a collection, per se. And that really excited me, because it is the kind of work that in Italy, Luciano's Italian and Argentinian. So in Italy, it's more common to see this kind of work in Florida, but in New York and in the US, you more generally see politicians or generals. On horseback, exactly. So, kind of in the spirit of creating new monuments to new narratives, this story inverses the myth of Medusa been reconceived where she achieves justice for herself. So, Collect Pond Park faces the New York County Criminal Court House. And as Luciano was walking around the city last summer, he was like, this is the place, this is where like this message can really communicate. And I could keep going. There, we received a letter, so there's been like a really significant, social, like, round after round of, internet, conversations around this work that have been really empowering to a lot of people internationally. And we received a letter from one woman who's an attorney in South Carolina who defends abused children. And I thought I'd read it because it's really powerful and I think really kind of sums up the experience of so many letters that we've received. And it's pretty brief. Mr. Garbati, I found your work this evening. Thank you for bringing an indescribable emotion into form. I'm an attorney in the U.S. and I represent abused and neglected children to the court and work to enforce their rights to safety and security away from their abusers. I often look for symbols to help my clients understand what I can do for them. I hope to someday be able to purchase a replica of her sculpture to display in my office for children to give them courage. And perhaps donate it to the juvenile court to display inside the court entry to give the gift of resolve to children who are facing their abusers and all who walk by her. Your work, I believe, will give my sweet victim children the ability to see what voice they have inside them, regardless of what horrible acts they have endured, and regardless of the internal and external scars they carry with them. It is my passion and my heart to see these children transform. They are no longer victims, but doers of justice, taking back the autonomy that we ripped from them. Thank you for this incredible work. You've brought the most joyous moments of life through this piece. When a child victim is given a voice and the court takes action to protect them from harm, the moment is most bittersweet. No one can celebrate the tragedy nor the victory, yet the look on Medusa's face is the look my children possess when they have become heroes of their own stories.
That's great. Elizabeth, what's the timing?
End of March. I mean, sorry, no, end of April.
Got it. Excellent.
Last week of April.
Well, thank you.
I would give it a New York byline underneath the title. I would say, "The payback's a bitch."
So when are the dates for this?
That would be end of April, so then
It's on top of your,
I didn't have the exact dates on there. It'll be like April to like August or something.
It doesn't have the date on it.
Yeah, so it'll be, it's not on Friday, so we should.
Yeah, that's like, we never see any of that, and that's permanent, but this we see.
I know.
I'm just asking, we never see anything, so 1% program for art still exists in New York City, doesn't it? Yet, that's never come, or do we see those in the community board? I'm just thinking, we're spending a lot of time on impermanent things that are up for 3 months, yet permanent
I
art
know
is
in the
part of the
past
1%.
we did, I don't know.
Yeah,
It may
so
not
it
have
seems
been
like an
in the
obvious.
district. It may
Time
be
they'll
that
make their
there may not have been any percent for art projects in your
Could be.
district for a while. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but
They're gonna have.
We already have 1%. It's called Wall Street.
There used to be a fund that new buildings.
And I think when you go to the community board meeting next week at 2:34, that fencing was a percent for art project.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, Paul, that was a good one out of the hat.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you for all
Thank
this
you.
presentation and good
Thank you.
luck.
Good luck.
All right, we have one more item we want to cover. As you can see from your agenda, Charging Bowl, we have to look forward to next month, speaking of artwork.
It's been postponed.
Okay, but let me just introduce the last item, which is dealing with the continued efforts to resolve what's going on the west side on Hudson River Park with Pier 40 and now Pier 76. And
Do the advisory council first? Okay.
I won't repeat myself because I think I already gave this report. You know, the governor vetoed the bill, so now a task force was put together, and it consists of a lot of shakers and movers. Elected officials were there. Actually, the three of us are members of this task force, which is under governor's orders to meet very regularly Friday mornings at 8:30 to come up with a solution within like a month or two to this.
So what, I'm sorry, what's
Yeah,
the,
that's-
what's the task force, who appointed you, what's it all
The
about?
task force was established by
called?
Hudson River Park. I don't know.
What's
It's
your
not the
task?
advisory council, it's,
So
it's
the, the community board 1 gets 2 representatives.
No,
Community
we
board
get
1
we get
gets 2 representatives, and they are Paul and Andrew, and they've been chosen by Anthony. I, as the chair of the advisory council, are also on that task force, and I lobbied to increase the number, so we've added 2 more members of the advisory council to it. Isaac, I don't know.
Isaac Daniel Astrakhan,
And also
Rob Perrin.
Rob Perrani from the Hudson River Foundation. So we have
Rob
Now-
Perani?
Yes.
Rob Perrani.
from
Oh.
the region, regional
RPA?
planning,
Right.
yeah.
So Rob has got a very busy schedule, so we'll see how many meetings he can come to.
Is it all men?
No.
Yes.
No.
I don't
I'm
know.
just curious.
There's probably 50 people there. It is not all men.
There's like
By
a
any
couple
stretch.
women.
The elected officials are all
So
women.
Gail,
The
Deborah-
power brokers are all women.
Yeah.
So what is it
In
that
this
you're,
day and age,
So-
it's not gonna be all men.
So let me just,
Remember.
let me just,
Tell me where.
I wanted to talk about the advisory council, but you seem to have led about Pier 40. What do you want to do?
Let's just finish the report on
Okay.
Pier 40, and then you'll give the update on that. So
Okay.
basically, bottom line is, you know, we're working to, one of the biggest tasks that this group has is to try to relocate or help to relocate the tow pound from Pier 76.
Right.
The governor and the head of the city council, Corey Johnson, are really gung-ho, and you know, everyone else there. All the elected officials from the west side were there. The state senator and the assembly member, Linda.
Everybody had reps
They
there.
were all there themselves, including Gail and, you know,
Gottfried.
But
Gottfried was there,
But
Linda
just-
Rosenthal.
Where is there to relocate?
But wait, hold on. Before we get to the issues,
Well-
I'm not so sure
We,
what the task force is charged with. I don't know if it's even going to produce a resolution or a document or a recommendation.
all right, let's
Yeah,
let
yeah,
Andrew
Andrew.
speak a little bit
Well, I was
to
just-
that now.
Because
Yeah.
I think that's a very important point. I
Right.
think there's the mandate, stated mandate of the governor, or from the governor, and then the approach that's being applied here. The mandate from the governor is to take a step back, look at the park holistically, don't just focus on Pier 40, look at other assets such as Pier 76, develop a plan and determine if that plan requires legislative amendment. That's what he, the governor, is asking for. If there's a plan that's produced that requires legislative amendment beyond what you showed us previously, which was specific to Pier 40 and allowing commercial office space, that's the stated deliverable, and that deliverable has a time frame of May 1st. The committee's being brought together to consider the financial needs of the park, looking at the different assets of the park, and with input of community need, a design plan, and considering both the financial needs and the design plan, are there associated changes to the act that would need to be put forth before the assembly and the governor?
so who are the designers on committee or the task
What was
force?
the name of that?
The,
I
the
have the
group
name.
that
Fields.
did, the group that did
Fields.
Gansevoort Peninsula.
Fields.
Field operations.
Yeah, field
Oh,
operations, and then
There you go.
there's another consultant with a long history, a gentleman,
Carl Weisbrod.
Carl Weisbord.
Lisa Switkin
Switkin, Lisa Switkin.
and Christina Pecorelli and Carl Weisbrod. They're the consultants, so to speak. who
And they're
are-
doing a master plan, what is?
It's
Who knows?
not exactly a master plan.
And James Corner of Field Operation is doing the plan.
Well, Lisa Switkin is one of the partners there.
So,
I think the focus will largely be Pier 76 and Pier 40. Not exclusively, but
We've
largely.
certainly taken a bad face, because I remember when I used to bring up Pier 40 all the time, and everyone would say, not in our backyard, we shouldn't be looking at it. Now we have a task force dealing with it. I think that's great, that at least we're on the task force.
I'm not so sure as a member that I've never stated what I think Pier 40 should be. And I'll talk about it when I get to the advisory council, but I don't really feel that I have the data and the information, I was just talking to Andrew, to really make an informed decision. I'm hoping somebody, and I don't think, I've been following it from the grandstands over the years, but I don't think the data has ever been really fully visible to really make an informed decision as to what one would like. For example, how long does any of these things, what is the downtime for the fields? So I'm a parent of a 10-year-old, and so they're gonna do something at Pier 40. Does my kid miss a generation of playing on Pier 40, or is it contrived? What's the impact on all the kids that play there now? There's a lot of things. How much does it cost to renovate? What's the needs of the park? I can go down a laundry list. And I'm assuming that we'll get some of those answers, but not all of those answers.
And Bob,
yeah.
The initial resolution that came out of CB2 specifically addressed those points, that any plan that comes forward has to take into account minimizing disruption
Right.
to current
Right,
park
right.
activities. Can it be eliminated? No, but
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
front and center.
No, I understand. I understand that was the request, but and that's the request. But I haven't seen what the different options are. I mean, I could say I want the cure for all diseases at Pier 40, but that's what I'm asking for. But what I'm saying the options are, I haven't seen what the options are.
I
Just
think it
had
was,
one meeting.
but I think.
No, but I haven't seen them over the
Well,
years.
But to talk to the resolution, I think it was more than a request. I think actually the proposed amendment referenced as an
Yeah.
exhibit or an attachment.
Okay, maybe.
The checklist.
Yeah, maybe.
Bob, don't worry, the governor's people will tell you.
Well, I think it was good that.
No, but
that-
we have an issue with our parks in Lower Manhattan, which is that there's like no parks in New York that look good that don't have private funding. And we're not a community that will privately fund our parks. Like they wanted to do that window tax
Yeah.
to help fund the park, and
Right.
everybody voted no. Not everybody,
Yeah.
it got
That's
voted,
coming back
it
up.
got voted down.
Right.
Warri also doesn't have that.
Right,
The
right, right.
alliance that does tax the businesses, they don't give a penny to Warri.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's
really,
amazing.
they
We
do
did
not.
talk a little bit about this
And-
at the meeting.
And so, if the tax money and the normal flow of government money allocation isn't gonna flow to the parks.
Right.
And if the citizens around, like at Central Park, those people pay a window tax and that helps fund the park. But here, we voted it down, and so, but we also
Yeah.
don't want development to fund the park.
Right,
So
right, right.
we're stranding our parks.
I think there is some movement on I know that the NID is being reintroduced on some, and I think there is some movement.
Reintroduced, meaning it's being brought
Discussed.
forward for consideration.
Everyone know what a NID is?
Neighborhood Improvement District.
It's like a bid, except you tax the
And
residential.
Andrew,
areas.
correct me if I'm wrong, from the governor's veto, I don't think that the funding of, and I'll surely say, I don't think the funding of Pier 40 and Pier I don't think the governor, there's a little window of opening that there might be some state funds for the park. I know that's optimistic, but I know I'm not the only person who read into that as a possibility, to address your point.
You know, the governor is spending gargantuan amounts of money on other parks. I mean, it's obscene.
Yeah. No, so I think he stepped in, he vetoed, and I think he's gonna put some money into it. I think so, and I think the governor was right to do what he did. My personal opinion, and rethink it and try to, it's only about a $12 million shortfall for Hudson River Park
Well,
Trust.
except it's all in the floodplain, you know, it's gonna flood.
Well, I don't know about floods,
You-
but I'm
wait
saying.
a minute, no, you're not allowed to say that,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
No.
Wait, nobody,
that-
nobody in this room can say they don't know about floods.
No, we're talking.
Because our whole shoreline is
I
in
got
the
it.
floodplain, and our parks are gonna
I-
get
I got-
damaged, and that's gonna be
I
more
got it,
money
but
for
that's
the
capital
maintenance.
money. We're talking about operating money.
Okay,
Like
but,
it's Corey's coming here, said she's operating that park for $3 million.
but
Hudson, I just want to get the figures
Okay.
straight. Hudson River Park is coming with an operating deficit, not a I don't know what, I didn't mean to say not worry about flooded. I got flooded. I know what floods are. So I'm just saying that the operating budget is short $12 million.
Okay, but let me just say that part of the not every flood damage becomes a capital project. Some of it becomes,
I understand.
oh, we've got to replace the mechanism for the fountain, or we've got to cover the
No,
grates for the fountain pumps before the thing, or or we've got to replace the safety surface. That's not necessarily like that. You know, it's like what budget does those repairs
No,
go into?
I'm just
So-
trying to give some structure to the conversation
Okay,
of
I
the dollar amounts.
Okay, I mean, I appreciate that.
I
but
mean,
it's like-
I would love to know how much it would cost to make the park resilient, and then that money could be a capital request. But I'm just saying the operating shortfall is $12 million, and that is, and I do believe Hudson River Park. You talk about Medusa cutting somebody's head off. There was a woman raped, and there's a lot of attacks going on. I think they're underfunded with security in Hudson River Park.
Really? Oh my
Yes,
God,
yes,
that's
yes.
terrible.
And everybody grandstand a few years ago. They marched, but there's still a lot of stuff that in that park that needs to protect, Medusa. You know, there's still a lot of shit going on there. But that is the task force job, right? I mean, that's.
And it's called the Hudson River Park Planning Task Force 2020.
Is that something that's open to the public on those? I see.
I have a list of the
tow
members.
pound, is that part of your mandate to find a
Not
place?
Yes.
exactly, but that's clearly an issue that everyone's talking about, and certainly those people
What are
on
the
the Upper
options?
West Side
At the meeting,
want to get rid of the tow pound so
And
they
how
could
many
get park
cars go
space.
there?
we don't know.
About 200.
Yeah.
The design plan will consider that the
They
tow
should-
pound will be removed.
They should put
Where
it
it
under the
goes is
jail.
still very much
They
an
should-
open
What?
discussion.
Well, it's the
Put
same
it
one
under
as
the
the
jail.
$10 billion. They should not do the jail and fund Hudson River Park.
What's where the jail in the Bronx is being proposed,
But-
which is one, is the
but
tow
I
path in
want-
the Bronx.
But I just want to give some context to this.
Just to that point,
Yeah.
though, I think the stipulation is each borough has to have a domiciled tow pound.
Yes,
Each borough,
that's right.
each borough.
So they do have to find something,
So I
right?
just hope it's not another park that they take over.
Okay.
And put the tow pound in a park.
Yeah,
That would be disappointing.
I don't think
How do
that's.
they do that?
This
that's-
is probably, I just, let me just give, this will help. Can I go, Paul? This, I just want to give some context. I am at the end, and every year, sort of, I give the report for the advisory council, and I want to just give that report quickly before people leave, so I could say I've done my duty. The advisory council, as I've been chair for the last year, takes on mostly quality of life issues. Because if you read the bylaws of the advisory council, there's something very hard to understand between what the advisory council does and what the community boards do. The bylaws were written 20 plus years ago. So now we have a bylaws task force, and Andrew and I are both working on it, and we are revising the bylaws. of the Hudson River Park Trust. They have to be approved by the trust. The other thing is, we've revised the membership of the Hudson River Park Advisory Council. So we have new members, and it's all full. And then finally, on the quality of life issues, of safety, of cleanliness, of the gardens in the park, on the parks over plastic, that's been the work of the advisory council. How it jives with community boards. For example, Community Board 2 says we want Pier 40 to be 10 stories high. It's just for argument's sake. Community Board 2 says that. Someone could manipulate the advisory council and pass a resolution that says we want Hudson River Park to be, Pier 40 to be 30 stories high. I'm just using that as an example of the incongruities of the two, as they are written, of the bylaws as they are written, between the community boards and the advisory council. That what I've done and what other people have done have stayed away from planning issues. I don't think that's going to continue. I think that there is a movement at the advisory council to be much more like community boards. And that is something that I don't think is the right thing to do. It's not evil, but I don't think that's the right direction for the advisory council. But I think that's what's going to be happening. So I'm reporting to this community board that space in between community boards and advisory boards has to be reconciled. I hope I'm clear on that.
Well, I guess I never, I was just, because I was on the advisory council, for all I know, I'm still on it. Catherine had appointed me, I think with you, Andrew, you got few years ago, whenever
Which
it
is
was.
the Hudson River Park?
Not the Hudson River, like, on
I don't
behalf of
know,
the community board,
yeah,
whatever it
yeah,
was. And I
yeah.
would go to all the meetings dutifully.
Right.
And I never understood that very question, which
Right.
is, we're, for example, in our board jurisdiction, Pier 26. Where do we where and how are we allowed to opine on the design, for example,
Well,
the estuarium as it presents itself?
Let me
Right.
let me just say that on the design of Pier 26, when it came up, the community board did opine and was given a presentation by the Hudson River Park Trust. The advisory council did not.
Okay.
Did not.
So it was just
And
the
and
trust
but
coming
if you
down.
read the bylaws, it could have, but only because how many meetings could people go to, and how informed are people to make a decision that is correct? So we know, because we have about 12 or 13 people who have permits, including myself, in Hudson River Park. We know the quality of life issues, but we have deferred to the community boards on the planning issues. I don't know if that's what the next person who runs the advisory council want to do. One of the recommendations is a 2-year, I know I'm not taking up as much time as Rory, is to do 2-year terms for the advisory council. That means that the community board 1 rep will not chair for until 5 years. For 4 years will
Can I
pass.
just ask a question?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can the advisory council change the bylaws on their own, or do
No,
they have to
no,
go through state
they have-
legislation and all
Not
that?
state legislation. The
Okay,
board,
the
the board of the Hudson River.
So, okay.
And just if
Just
peop-
to understand.
If people aren't aware, there are 3 appointed, there's 1 appointed representative from each of the 3 community boards. So Bob Townley represents CB1, someone represents CB2, and another person CB4.
Right.
The chair position rotates every year. So CB1 is coming up on the end of its most current chair position, and it rotates, I believe, to CB4.
Right.
Part of the bylaws consideration, what's been floated is there benefit to extending that to the 2-year term? Nothing's been discussed in detail, decided, it was just an idea that was floated.
I don't know
No, I wouldn't weigh in. I actually, though, some people said I should pull a Bloomberg and extend my term, but I personally decided not to.
I just think there's so many layers. It's like peeling back an onion on the Hudson River Park Trust. And so whatever way that there can be, greater engagement with the community in a very transparent way is,
one of the
something
things.
to think about as you address the
Yeah,
two bylaws.
yeah. One of the look, I think it's moving in the opposite
Well, it sounds
direction. But one of the things I'm going to do with the Hudson River Park Trust is form a safety and operations committee. I hope that's approved, and I will do that just as a member of the advisory council, because I think that's where you hear from the users of the park as to what they think the park should be, and how it should be safe, how it should be clean, how it should be
So where's
beautiful.
the least safe part of the park? Where's the most crime?
So that's a good question. It's not Pier 40, because that's where all the police officers park themselves. I think, personally, when I get involved, but I want to hear from other people, I think that the model the Battery Park City Authority uses is much safer than the Hudson River Park. They have a much better system, and they've had great success in keeping eyes on people.
They have a revenue stream.
Well, it's not a question of revenue. Hudson River Park spends money too on these, but they have a much more diffuse way of deploying their staff, and that has to be looked at, because if you walk now, if we go for a walk now on Pier 25, it's scary. You could. There are some. There've been some ornery.
25?
Yeah.
I have to say, I'm there every day.
No, go now.
Well, I wouldn't go now. Why
But
would we go now?
no, you won't. But young women jog there at night after work.
Well, that's a
It's
whole other-
5:30,
I see, that's
and
a
they're
whole other
Gals
thing.
go during the day.
yeah. No, right, exactly. And no, it's not really.
Yeah, I wouldn't do
I'm
that
there
at
all the
night.
time,
I wouldn't
and
do that
there
at
are
night.
some. My friend's
Yeah.
bicycle was burnt up by some thugs in the park that were having a fight with the Parks Department. There's a lot going on with safety in the
that
park.
I believe at night.
Yeah, and the park is open till 1:00 at night, and you could walk there and sit there on Pier 25 or Pier 70, and it's pretty desolate.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and it's a dead end.
It's a dead end, and
Yeah, no,
but it's also dangerous on the path too. There are
well,
people
I
that there
can see
are
that at
people
night.
who are, and I don't want to use the word homeless, but there are people, and they're not homeless. There are people that prey on people harassing them, and there are people that that's my goal. I don't care if Pier 40 is 10 stories or 20 stories high. I don't care what the sculptures look like. I want to make sure the kids and the women are not attacked.
So what is the agenda for this committee for Pier 4? Like, what are we supposed to be doing?
Nothing. I mean, you're being represented.
for Hudson River Park, like what should we?
You're talking back to the task force?
No, well, how can we be effective? That's all. It's like we're spending an evening in here. What do we do? What are we supposed to,
Well, I think the community board can, if it feels like it wants to be territorial, can discuss issues of Pier 40. If you're talking about development planning issues, or you're talking about safety and.
I'm talking about.
Well, there's different.
Maybe we could help find a location for the tow pound.
And I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
Would they look at splitting the tow pound at all? If it's hard to find a place.
It's not
to
entirely
run
clear. I think they might be willing to take certain operations out of it, like the repair shop for the tow trucks
I'm done.
themselves.
Empty space down here.
All right.
But that's my report.
Thank you.
I've given my report.
Thank you. Wonderful
Laura,
job.
Laura
We can
and
go to the
Alice,
park now with a few baseball bats and see what we can do to
One
protect
last
children and women.
comment to Laura's question. I think at this particular stage, what's most helpful is for the community to bring forward any ideas that they want to see incorporated into the remaining unbuilt spaces in the park.
Well,
Oh.
specific uses.
get it, so, and the more we can engage on that very topic by having the trust come and show us what they're thinking about, show us what they're doing, and we've been trying for years, the better. Because when it comes and we have, this is what it is, which is what we're gonna get, you know it, and you've probably already seen it maybe, that estuarium, it's a fish only. And so I would say, and in terms of all this bylaw and rethinking of how this whole trust is structured, the more transparency, the more community engagement,
Absolutely.
the better. So,
And I don't carry their baggage, but I think with Pier 26 and Gansevoort, they've made more effort than in the past to involve the
I
community.
think a little bit, you're right, I will give you that.
Well, the trust was very involved in the early years of the design of 25 and 26 with this community board. So I don't necessarily think that I think it's a matter of how much time is there in the day and how many different committees are they reporting to. So I would suggest Community Board 2 is the vehicle for planning on Pier 40, except that this new task force, which I'm still not sure what it is also another vehicle. I don't think the Community Board here is, we could pass whatever resolutions we want, but that's not really the vehicle for doing
One of the
that.
things that we know is the Army Corps of Engineers is the one that's gonna be studying that space, in terms of any resiliency. We're waiting on that, whenever that's coming out. When is that supposed to be in the next?
Storm surge barrier stuff?
Well, exactly, so anything that's north of Battery Park, right? That's all the Army Corps of Engineer. And we know that the whole west side floods, and that will continue to flood. So, if we know that they're going to have to build up somehow, that's the idea, Talus's point about proactively planning. If you know that they're gonna be building up the edge of all of Manhattan by 8 to 10 feet or more, that's a big thing, and you can park a lot of cars underground and make a park above and, do something creative and, everything else, because we know.
Spoken like an architect.
I was gonna say, that's coming, and every flood map you see, it comes in right at Canal Street, and it comes in and wraps around Tribeca behind.
Yeah, I think this community board has finally gotten through, just talked to the Hudson River Park Trust in a way that they now recognize that the west side can't be answered when Madeline said we're not worried about resiliency, we're doing nothing. Now they are really acknowledging that there's something, and they are working with Battery Park City Authority with that tie-in idea.
Yep.
So it's moving, you're right.
It's just a shame
more
that,
better.
they get somebody like Barry Diller who puts all their money into this. It's a really cool thing, but it's like this island out there that's not really solving
Problems with
the
the island.
Well,
terrestrial.
listen, I run after-school programs. We get a 10% reimbursement rate from the city of New York. There's a lot to complain. There's a lot. You got to get the money for it. And there's one pot of money. It's called the government, and you have to try to get it. And different priorities are met, different priorities are met. But putting up resiliency, you're talking billions of dollars.
Yes.
You just got a jail for $10 billion.
All
So-
right.
All right, I think
So-
we need
We
to
call it a
adjourn.
diagram.
I
We're
like
not gonna
Barry
resolve
Diller.
these